Welcome to this space, a space just for you to reconnect and look inward.
In this first video, I'm going to show you a few poses and exercises that are going to help you build your flexibility for Pinchamayurasana. So first, I want to explain you which muscles we're going to be working on. The first thing to keep in mind is that when you're in Pinchamayurasana, your arms are going to be overhead. It's kind of weird to think about it when you're upside down, but your arms are actually going to be over your head. So you need to feel the flexibility in order to do this. And that flexibility is going to come from a few different places. The first one are your lats. The second one are your pecs. And then your shoulders, especially your deltoids and your rotator cuff muscles. We also want to work on hamstring flexibility. So when you're in dolphin pose, which is your foundation for Pinchamayurasana, you need to try to keep your legs as straight as possible, and also you want to be able to walk your feet forward. So in order to do that, we need to build that hamstring flexibility. And lastly, we're going to work on the hip flexor flexibility. So this is going to help you eventually being able to get into the pose in a more controlled way without having to jump your legs up into the pose. So you will be able to split your legs and lift one leg at a time without, again, having to jump into the pose. So for the first exercise we're going to do, you're going to need a strap. If you don't have one, you can use a scarf or something long. And you want to hold it a little wider than your knees. Just keep in mind that the wider you hold it, the easier it's going to be. So if you have to hold it wider, that's totally fine too. Keep your arms straight all the time and bring the strap down to your knees. As you inhale, lift your arms up overhead, and exhale, send your arms back and try to release your arms back behind you. And we're going to return. Inhale, reach your arms up, and exhale, release your arms back down to your knees. And let's try it one more time. Inhale, arms up overhead. Exhale, release your arms down behind you. And return. Inhale up. And exhale back to your knees. Again, trying to keep your arms straight all the time. And you can do it maybe for 5 to 7 times. So in this exercise, you're stretching all those muscles that I mentioned before that are going to allow you to lift your arms overhead. Plus, you're also working on the range of motion of your shoulders. Now, the next pose is going to be puppy pose. So you're going to come up to tabletop. This pose is going to be very important too for Pincha because it's really going to open your chest. So stretch your pecs as well as your lats, and will give you that openness in the upper body that you need for Pincha. So for this pose, you want to keep your hips right over your knees. Walk your hands forward. And you can release your forehead on the floor. You're trying to send your chest down towards the floor as you keep your arms active. And if this is enough, you can just stay here. If you feel like you can go a little further, you can place your chin on the floor instead of your forehead, and that's going to give you more space to send your chest down. And you can hold it for 5 breaths. Now, the next pose we're going to do is downward facing dog. So in downward facing dog, you're actually stretching a lot of the muscles you need for Pincha as well. So you're going to lift your knees up, push your hips up towards the sky as you lengthen your spine. Slightly send your chest back towards your thighs. And press through your palms. Keep your arms, your shoulders active. So in downward dog, you're not just opening your chest, so stretching your pecs, your lats, and your shoulders, but you're also stretching your hamstrings. So again, try to lengthen your spine and keep sending your hips up towards the ceiling. and try to press your heels down and straighten your legs, although you always want to give priority to your spine. So if you feel like you're rounding your spine too much, then you can slightly bend your knees and try to send your chest back towards your thighs as you lengthen your spine. And now to go to the next pose, you're actually going to go back to downward dog. And from here, you're going to step the right foot in between your hands and release your left knee down. So this is low lunge. Here, you're really getting a good deep stretch of your left hip flexors. So try to keep your right knee over your heel and release your hips forward and down. If you feel like your knee is going beyond your heel, then you can move your left knee back. And just feel that stretch there and breathe here. And you can also try lizard pose to go even a little deeper. So you can place your right hand inside of your right foot. So move your foot slightly to the side, making sure that your hands are as wide as your shoulders. And keep releasing your hips forward and down. So now, because your leg is out of the way, you will have like more space to go further. And you can also try to drop your elbows down. And again, feel that stretch there in your left hip flexors. And this is going to help you a lot to eventually be able to get into the pose in a more controlled way. And you can feel it on the other side. So let's return back to downward dog. Step the right foot back. And step the left foot in between your hands. First, low lunge. Release your right knee down. Make sure that the left knee is over your heel. And try to release your hips forward and down. Feel the stretch in your right hip flexors. And let's try lizard pose on this side. Take the left hand inside of the left foot as you move your foot a little bit to the side, making sure that your hands are right underneath your shoulders. You can also try to drop your elbows down and just feel how here you can go even deeper in the pose. You will feel that stretch even deeper in your right hip flexors. And you can hold here maybe for 5 breaths. And just try to really connect to those sensations. You really want to like understand what's happening in your body. And then when you practice the actual pose, you're going to see why we're doing it. It will make more sense. Okay, and let's return back to tabletop. And now we're going to practice dolphin pose. So dolphin pose is really the most important pose of all because it's going to be your foundation for Pincha. That's going to be literally your first step into Pincha. So that's really the pose you want to try to practice as much as you can. So let's start in tabletop and bring your elbows down right underneath your shoulders. Tuck your toes, lift your knees up, and this is going to be kind of like a downward dog. So try to send your chest slightly back. Keep your spine long and try to push your hips up towards the ceiling. Now, if possible, you can try to press your heels down. In this one, it's going to be more challenging than in downward dog. And remember, always give priority to your spine. Avoid rounding your spine. Even if you have to bend your knees a little bit, keep your spine long. And now we're going to add a little extra to dolphin pose. So this is going to help us stretching both the hamstrings and the hip flexors. And you're actually going to see later that this is actually one of the steps into Pincha. But just practicing this, it's a great stretch and a great way to prepare your body for the pose. So let's get back into dolphin pose, elbows underneath your shoulders. Lift your knees up, send your hips up towards the ceiling. And for this one, later when we're actually trying the pose, you're going to walk your feet forward. For this one, you're not going to walk your feet further, and you're going to try to lift one leg up as high as you can and try to press your heel down. In this case, your left heel down. Gaze towards your left toes. Try to keep your hips squared. And let's see how that feels on the other side. Release the right foot down and lift your left leg up, hips squared. Try to press the right heel down as much as you can. Keep your hips squared. And as you hold here, keep sending your chest slightly back. Keep your spine long. And release your foot down. So what I was trying to explain, I don't know if that made a lot of sense, but in the last video of this series, where we're going to see the step-by-step into Pinchamayurasana, there's going to be a step in which you're going to lift one leg at a time. But the difference between that and this is that in what we just did, you're going to lift your leg up in dolphin pose. So in dolphin pose, you're not really walking your feet as far as you can, as you would do when you're trying to get into the actual pose. So you're simply in dolphin pose and you're going to lift one leg at a time here just for the stretch itself. And you can also try it in downward dog. So from downward dogs, which is actually a three-legged dog, you can reach one leg up, trying to keep your hips squared and press the opposite heel, in this case, your left heel down. And try to keep your spine long, press through your palms, arms active, and switch and see how it feels on the other side. So this is helping you stretching your hamstrings as well as your hip flexors. Again, giving you that flexibility which you're going to need when you're trying to lift your legs up into the pose. Now in the next video, we're going to work on building the strength you will need for Pinchamayurasana.